Welcome back to the Nancy Levin Show. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're tuning in today, chances are you are standing at a threshold. Maybe it's the quiet discomfort you can no longer ignore. Maybe it's the knowing that the version of your life you've been performing no longer fits. Or maybe it's the deep soul whisper that says, there's more. If that's where you are, I want to meet you right there. And today's episode is about reinvention. Not the surface level, make it look good kind, but the soulful, sustainable kind that happens when you begin to live aligned with your truth. And this is the kind of reinvention I teach. It's the kind of reinvention I coach because it's the kind of reinvention I've lived. Reinvention is not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you've always been. Beneath the armor, beneath the roles, beneath the approval seeking, reinvention is a reclamation. And my journey, like so many people I coach, began with a crash, a collapse of the life I had carefully constructed to appear perfect. And beneath that collapse, a woman I had long abandoned was just waiting to be remembered. And so in this episode, I'm going to take you behind the scenes into the real story that led me to create what is now my reinvention coaching framework. The moment I realized that external validation would never be enough. The tools I used to find my way home to myself, and the mission I now live by to help other high achievers and people pleasers and perfectionists build self-trust and own their inherent worth, because we don't need to wait for a crisis to make a change. And so this is an episode about truth, and it's about change. And it's about your power to reclaim your life inch by inch. So there was a time in my life when everything looked great on the outside. I was the event director at Hay House Publishing. I was traveling the world, producing sold-out conferences, standing behind some of the biggest names in personal growth and transformation. And I was surrounded by best-selling authors and spiritual celebrities. And I was producing, managing all the details, handling all the crises, and always being the one who everyone could count on. And I wore my competence like armor. I wore my perfection like proof. And I believed that deep down I could do everything right. And if I could do everything right, I would be loved. I would be safe. But what looked like success was actually a slow erasure of my own voice. And I had built a life on being indispensable to others. But in doing so, I had become entirely dispensable to myself. And for years, I completely ignored the signs, the quiet ache, the feeling that I was moving through life on autopilot, the dissonance between who I was and who I was pretending, performing to be. And one day, the truth came crashing through in a way I couldn't avoid. And if you've heard me tell the story, it began with a voicemail. I was at the airport on the way home from a work trip, and I listened to a message from my then husband that made me buckle my knees. He had found my journals. He was very threatening. And in that moment, the facade I had been clinging to shattered. And I went home to a confrontation that exposed more than just the content of those journals. It exposed the truth I had been trying to outrun for years, that I had lost myself. And that day marked the beginning of a very long, messy, honest journey back to myself, a journey that would ultimately lead me out of my marriage, out of performance, out of perfection, out of my position in a corporate setting, and back into integrity. But let me be clear. This wasn't a dramatic leap into empowerment. It was a very slow, inch by inch unwinding. It was a reclamation that required me to unlearn the lies I'd believed about worth, about love, and about what it means to be whole. So when I began navigating my own transformation, I didn't have a name for it. I just knew I couldn't keep living the way that I had been. And I was exhausted. I was unfulfilled and terrified that the only way to be loved was to perform. But as I walked myself through the mess, a pattern began to emerge, a rhythm of returning to truth. And eventually I realized that this was more than just my own personal process. It was a repeatable framework for transformation that anyone could follow and that could be applicable to any context. And it is the foundation for what I now call reinvention coaching, which is a step-by-step, soul-aligned method to help people come home to themselves. And it's grounded in what I have coined as my transformation equation. And this is the structure that takes reinvention out of the abstract and turns it into a lived, embodied reality. And so the transformation equation is change equals vision plus choice plus action. So we're going to break this down because it's more than just a formula. It is a roadmap. Because vision is about clarity. It's not about having every step figured out. It's not about creating your 5-year plan. It's about being honest enough to name what your ideal set of desired circumstances are. Stepping into imagining possibility. And so for me, vision began when I let go of the question, what should I do? And I started asking myself, what do I want? Vision doesn't come from your head. It comes from your body. It comes from your heart. It comes from your intuition. It comes from your inner knowing. And so many people I coach are convinced they don't have a vision, but we all do. For most of us, that vision has been buried under years of shoulds. That vision is just waiting in the wings. It's just waiting for permission to speak. And your vision doesn't have to be loud. It just needs to be yours. Once you have that clarity of vision, once you have that sense of what's possible, what you want, what you are living into, who you are becoming, that vision becomes the gauge by which you make your choices and take your actions, because every single choice you make, every single action you take does only one of two things. It serves your vision or it sabotages it. And so once you've glimpsed this new possibility for yourself, the next step is choosing it. And here's what so many people think. I have to be ready. And I want to let you know that readiness is a myth. You don't wait until you're fearless to choose yourself. You choose yourself and then courage follows. When I left my marriage, I wasn't certain. I wasn't fearless. I was simply unwilling to keep betraying myself. So choice is that moment you decide to stop outsourcing your life to fear or approval or habit. And it's not a one-time event. Reinvention is a series of choices, tiny, quiet, daily decisions to stay aligned with your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And then action is where we bring the vision into form. Not hustle, not over-efforting, not perfection, just aligned, embodied action. And so in reinvention coaching, this often looks like setting a boundary, for example, knowing your own limits, having a conversation you've been avoiding, saying no without apologizing, saying yes without over-explaining. It's not hustle. It's not over-efforting, not perfection. It's just aligned, embodied action. And I like to approach this from the place of taking micro action. The smaller, the better. So we set ourselves up for success because we want to hold ourselves accountable to what we're committing to. And here's the thing. It's not even about taking the right step. It's just about movement. Movement mobilizes momentum and possibility, and you can always course correct. So every action rooted in your truth reinforces the belief that you can trust yourself. And this leads to a big bonus of the transformation equation, which is self-trust. Trust is the soil that everything is growing in. Without trust, you're going to abandon your vision the moment someone else disapproves. Without trust, you're second-guessing every choice. Without trust, action becomes anxiety-driven performance instead of soul-led progress. So rebuilding trust with yourself is really what's at heart here. It means learning to hear your intuition and honor it. It means noticing when fear is running the show and choosing presence instead. It means forgiving yourself when you fall back into old patterns and trying again. The most powerful shift I've ever made is this. I stopped trying to prove I was enough. And I started trusting my worth and value. That trust didn't come from achieving anything at all. That trust came from returning to myself. So I imagine you listening. You are the one who has mastered the art of appearing fine. You show up. You follow through. You hold it all together. You're the go-to, the reliable one. You're the one everyone turns to when they need help or guidance or organization or emotional safety. You might be an entrepreneur. You might be a leader. You might be a healer. You might be an exec. You might be a parent, or all of the above. You are already extraordinary. You are already capable and committed, but underneath the accolades, the titles, and the to-do lists, you're quietly asking yourself, is this all there is? And I want you to know that question is not selfish. That question is sacred. And my mission is to help you answer it, not from guilt or fear, but from the grounded truth of your worth. Many people I coach are high functioning, high achieving, high performing, and they're also deeply disconnected from themselves because their entire identity has been built on being who others need them to be. They've been taught that their worthiness is earned, that self-sacrifice is noble, that being liked is more important than being real. And so they become shapeshifters, perfectionists, chronic caregivers. They build lives that meet expectations, but not their own desires. And here's the thing, society rewards us for this. You get praised for overfunctioning. You get promoted for people-pleasing, admired for being the one who does it all. But inside, you're depleted. And you're silently screaming, sometimes resentful, sometimes completely numb. And the idea of reinvention can sound terrifying because it threatens the very identity that has brought you success. But here is the truth that I want you to hear. You are allowed to want more. You're allowed to want a life that feels good, not just one that looks good. You're allowed to tell the truth, even if someone else feels disappointed by it. You're allowed to let go of the roles that were never yours to carry. And so when I talk about reinvention, I'm not talking about blowing up your life. I'm talking about coming back home to yourself. You do not need to burn everything down. You don't need to throw away the parts that work. You simply need to ask, what is mine to keep and what is mine to release. Because reinvention is about discerning what still aligns and what no longer does. It's about telling the truth of who you are now, even if it's different from who you used to be. And this work matters because it liberates you from the impossible standards that were never yours to meet. And it gives you back to you. And when you start living from self-trust instead of self-betrayal, the ripple effect is profound. And you begin to model what wholeness looks like. You lead with integrity. You parent from presence. You create from freedom. And you no longer seek validation because you already embody it for yourself. So I want to connect right now with the part of you that's ready to move. Not impulsively, not perfectly, but honestly. If something has stirred in you during this conversation, it's not a coincidence. It's the sound of your truth rising. It's the nudge toward reinvention. And so where do you begin? The most common trap I see people fall into is waiting until they feel completely ready. But the truth is, reinvention doesn't begin with readiness. It begins with willingness. Willing to be honest, willing to be seen, willing to take one small step in the direction of alignment. So I'm going to give you 5 powerful, practical places to begin. The first is to start with radical honesty. And you can simply ask yourself the question, what am I pretending not to know? What am I pretending not to know? Now, this question can feel confronting, but it's also quite clarifying because deep down you do know. You know when something's off. You know when you're hiding. You know when your life no longer reflects who you are. You've just been trained to override that knowing in the name of being nice or responsible or likable or good. Radical honesty doesn't require a grand announcement. It starts with you, admitting the truth in the privacy of your own heart. That's the first crack in the armor. That is where the light gets in. The second is to make one different choice, because as I said, you don't have to overhaul your entire life. You just need to make one choice that aligns with your truth. And it could be as simple as pausing before saying yes, leaving a conversation that drains you, telling the truth about your capacity. Change doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with different choices made consistently. And every time you choose yourself, even in a small way, you're building the muscle of self-trust. The third is to track your truth. I always recommend creating a space, whether it is a journal, a voice note, a private document, where your truth can land without any judgment. This ritual of self-connection is a space where you don't have to show up polished, where your fears and longings and confusion and clarity are all welcome. Reinvention does not require perfect insight. It just requires presence. It just requires you showing up for you. And when you track your truth, you start to notice patterns. You start to reclaim your voice. You start to see the breadcrumbs of your next becoming. The fourth is to choose self-trust over approval. And this one is huge because so often we silence ourselves in order to be approved of. We say what others want to hear. We edit our desires. We abandon our boundaries. But every time you do that, you're moving further away from yourself. And so reinvention asks you to choose self-trust, even when it's inconvenient, even when it makes other people uncomfortable, even when it risks misunderstanding. Because the truth is this, your self-trust is more important than anyone else's validation. And then the fifth is to give yourself permission to be supported. Reinvention is not a solo mission. Yes, the work is yours to do, but that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Support doesn't weaken you. It strengthens your capacity to stay in integrity. I remember when I was afraid to ask for help because I thought asking for help meant that I was weak or that I was stupid. But really asking for help allows the support allows the strength and wisdom of others to add to mine. So let yourself be seen. Let yourself be held. Let yourself ask for help. You're not meant to carry your transformation alone or in silence. So let's step into the space here where doubt meets desire, because that's the edge where so many of us live, that edge between longing and fear, between truth and hesitation. And so I know you might have some questions swirling around in your heart right now. Not performative questions, but the real ones, the ones you might not even have said out loud. Questions like, what if I don't know what I want? This is one of the most common things I hear. And what I want you to know is that not knowing what you want doesn't mean that you're lost. It means you've been surviving. It means you've built your life around the needs of others, not your own. It means your intuition hasn't disappeared. It's just been dormant. It's been buried under years of being last on your own list. So let's release the pressure to know your whole vision and start with what you are done tolerating, and let yourself grieve with what is no longer a fit, and trust that clarity will emerge when you stop pretending, because desire doesn't shout, it whispers. And when you get quiet enough, you will be able to hear it again. So on the topic of desire, I want to invite you to take a powerful next step with me. I have created Reignite Your Spark. It is a free 5-day experience to help you do exactly what we're talking about today, especially if your vision feels distant, if your vision feels dormant. You'll find everything you need for free at nancylevin.com/spark. And over the next 5 days, you're going to receive an email each day with a short video from me, some powerful coaching insights, simple, profound practices and prompts, and I'm giving you a workbook to support your process. This is not surface work. This is deep. This is real. And it's the kind of connection that brings your outer life into alignment with your inner truth. Because your desires are not random. They're roadmaps, and they're waiting to be followed, not ignored. And so this is the first step toward your reinvention. And we're not putting it off for someday. We're not waiting to be ready or for things to feel convenient. We are starting now. So again, join me at nancylevin.com/spark, and we will reignite your spark together. So another question I often hear is, what if I hurt people by changing? And this question holds so much weight, especially for those of us who were raised to believe that being good means being agreeable and being accommodating and available always. But the truth is, when you start honoring yourself, some people might feel disappointed, but their discomfort is not your responsibility to absorb. You can be honest and kind. You can create boundaries and love deeply. You can change without abandoning your heart. What you can't do is keep betraying yourself for the sake of keeping everyone else comfortable. So this is your invitation to release that, because you deserve to belong to you. Another question I hear is concern from the place of, what if I've built my whole life on being perfect? Then welcome. You're in the right place. If you have spent years polishing your image, controlling outcomes, earning love through excellence, this work is especially for you. Perfectionism may have kept you safe, but it also kept you small. So real reinvention asks you to drop the mask, Not all at once, not in dramatic fashion, but inch by inch, breath by breath. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You simply need to be present and real. So let that be enough, because it already is.